Hi, I'm Pete Seligman, Managing Director of SRO Technology. I'm excited to present our new podcast, Measure Up, brought to you by our team to talk about their favourite topic, industrial measurement. We're working hard this year to bring the Ramsey product range back to the market. Ramsey's been around for a long time, longer than SRO and a lot longer than any of us. And so we're proud to be the custodians of this great brand for the next phase of its journey. And what better way to bring you along for the ride than to give you a behind-the-scenes look via this season of our new podcast. Let's go and have a look. In this episode, I speak to Matt Rozyn, our Chief Technology Officer for the Ramsey team that we've formed, having taken on the Ramsey product range earlier this year. I've worked with Matt for a few years now on a range of different products and businesses, and it's my pleasure to work with him again as we bring Ramsey back to the market. He's highly experienced and very, very passionate about product development and doing his best to make sure that the products that we bring back to market and develop over the next few years are delivering the best possible outcome for technicians in the field and their customers. Thanks for joining me today, Matt.
You're welcome.
Really good to have you here. And, we've recorded a couple of these episodes already with a few other people in the team, and it's been great to get to know a little bit about them. So let's start there. Can you give us a bit of your background before we get stuck into the detail?
Sure thing. So I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer originally. I completed a PhD in vibration and instrumentation engineering. So that's the core qualifications I have. And I spent quite a few years designing products, engineered products, designing products for industrial and consumer applications, in addition to working in business for quite a number of years as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And, you and I have known each other for quite a while and have actually worked on a few different projects together.
Yeah.
Two in particular that kind of bear some resemblance to the process we're going through at the moment with Ramsey, one being CIC Technology, and the other one being Petronic. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of role that you had in each of those projects or businesses, and how that relates to what you're up to now?
Yeah, sure. So both businesses that you mentioned there, CIC and Petronic, are very similar to what we're doing with Ramsey. So they were, an acquisition of a business, and we had to go through a stage of due diligence. So going through all the technology documentation, understanding what was there, and then reviewing the product designs and improving them, and then bringing them back into manufacture, in addition to listening to customer feedback and all those kind of things, customer feedback and all kinds of feedback that you receive from people to try to make things the best product they can be.
Yeah. And it's interesting how similar, all of those products are industrial type products, right? And all of them have, a hardware component, electronics component, some sort of firmware, a bit of a software overlay, some communications related stuff. It's interesting how many similarities there are, even though each of the applications are quite different. What have you found has been some of the things you've had to learn over the last 10 to 15 years in dealing with those products that helps you be able to really dig in during that due diligence process and understand the most important things to learn about a product as you're trying to get under the bonnet?
Yeah, every time you go through that process, you learn more about how to do the process. So going through the Petronic and the CIC process gives us a good foundation for going through Ramsey. And the kind of things that you look for is, we look for the real basic things in due diligence. So you look for, do we have all of the software? Do we have all the firmware? Is it in a factor, like a format that we can actually use and modify, or is it given to us in a compiled form factor where we're not able to modify it? Do we have the basic design files for the electronic systems, or have we just been given production files? So you go through all that in due diligence to make sure you've got all the information that you need to actually not only own the intellectual property, but to be able to modify the intellectual property and to make those improvements. So that was the process we went through with Ramsey, and going through those other businesses really enabled us to do a real thorough job on Ramsey.
So it's probably about 6 months since we really kind of completed that deal, and then it took maybe a month or two to go through the process of getting access to those various components and starting that transition of design files and drawings and various other things for all those Ramsey products. Over the last 6 months, was there something that was easier than you thought it was going to be in going through that diligence and transition process? Something that actually you thought, oh, this is going to be really tough, but when it came to it, it was actually easier than you thought?
No. Everything's always harder and takes longer than what you think it will, which is why we allowed ourselves a reasonable amount of time to do it properly. We didn't want to promise you and the other directors that it would take a month to do the process, because I just knew it was not going to take that length of time, particularly given, if we compare it to Ptronic, which was one of the businesses we acquired with SRO, that was only a single product. So it's quite easy to do a due diligence on one product. The Ramsey acquisition was not just a product. There's a massive range of products at all different stages of development. So we've got really long, like products that have been in the field for 30 years, like the 6012C speed sensor, well-known product, been around for a long time, through to something like the Flex, which is a brand new product that had just been brought into market and has things that need to be improved on it because it's such a new product. All new products brought into markets always have things that need to be improved and enhanced over time.
And a range of different platforms as well, right?
Yes.
So it's not like you just had, here's a platform and here's a series of children products that hang off that common platform. So you get comfort around that and then everything kind of translates. It's actually a whole range of different platforms that you're going to have to get across.
Yeah, and they're all completely different. The 6012C speed sensor has hardly any electronics in it and no software or firmware, through to something like the Flex, which is like the most sophisticated integrator in the market. There's nothing else out there that's at the same level in terms of sophistication and what it can do. So the massive range of spread of different products. So therefore it requires a different level of time to delve into those things. And the more complex the product is, the longer it takes.
So it feels like I asked that question as a Dorothy Dixer, and I knew you were going to say no to make it all sound harder. But I actually was hoping you would say that there was something that was easier than you thought. But to switch it upside down then, was there anything that was actually harder than you thought it was going to be? If everything was quite a challenge to get your head across, with complexity, range, all that sort of stuff, was there anything that stood out as being actually a bunch harder than you thought it was going to be?
I think the Flex was probably harder than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
There's, it's a very sophisticated product, and there was a lot of information to go through and make sure that we'd received from Thermo Fisher. So there's a lot of time spent, testing and compiling and reviewing and making sure that we could actually effectively build the product. Because if we can't build the product in terms of, the mechanical or the electrical or the software, if we can't build it, then there's no way that we can modify it. So a lot of time was spent initially just proving that we could build those products, and then we've got a base that we can then modify. And that process took a lot longer than what I thought it would. It's a very sophisticated product. Yeah.
And not least of which, I guess, because within Thermo, who owned the Ramsey range previously, a lot of those teams had changed and people had moved since they discontinued 12 or 18 months ago, but also the supply chain had stopped as well. And so if you were to pick up a product range that was still in production and still in development, there's a bit of momentum there, I guess, in terms of the IP and the knowledge base that then you can tap into. Whereas this really was kind of dusting off some bits and pieces and trying to find all the right people that had the right knowledge base in various parts of, frankly, the world, from Europe to South America to North America, all over the place. There were little bits. It was a little bit like an investigation, right?
It's totally like an investigation. Yeah. I mean, you've raised a great point there that we haven't talked about. It's not just getting the designs and then pressing go. Like all the supply chains for these products had been effectively stopped. We had to go back and re-talk to all those suppliers and try to reinvigorate the manufacturing process of these. So it's been a really complex process to get these back to market, and we're very close to having the full range of Ramsey products back in stock. So next year, 2025, would be a really exciting year. We're just on the verge of having all those back in production, but it's by no means been an easy task. There's been a lot of supply chain things we've had to resolve, a lot of engineering things we've had to resolve. And it's not just bringing it back to market in the form that it was before. So, for example, the Flex controller, we've done extensive and exhaustive discussions with customers and our own technicians. So SRO is a technician business. We install and service these products ourselves. So we've got a great data pool of fantastic service engineers that can give us feedback around the product. And they gave us good and unbiased and unfiltered feedback. And we've taken all that feedback and not only bringing the product back into the market, we've improved it. We've taken on board all that feedback. And I think people will be really excited when they get their hands on the new product.
Yeah. And tell us a bit about that process of speaking to customers and speaking to technicians. How did you, because it's always funny when you speak to people about products, particularly in a market where there are a range of different products with different features and benefits. And I imagine that in that process, you would have got a wide range of feedback, but also potentially in some instances, competing feedback. I prefer it this way. Actually, I prefer it this way. Actually, I like the way that it's already done. How did you go through the process of distilling all of that into things that you could convert to actionable changes to code or electronics or whatever? Like, how did you map that?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it comes down, in essence, to a captain's call. If we have competing interests and requirements, a good example of that would be on the Flex controller, the terminals that are used on the controller. So on the current Flex controller, there are 3.5 millimeter pitch connectors. That won't mean much to many people, but to the technicians out there that know what I'm talking about, it means a lot. Those connectors are really small and they're really difficult to use. You can't use 1.5 millimeter pitch cables on them. Okay, so really hard to install the product. So we're taking on board that feedback, and the new versions of the Flex that are coming out, we've modified it to put 5.08 millimeter pitch connectors on there. So it's much easier to put a 1.5 millimeter cable in. Now, the reason I have started on that discussion is because if you ask any technician what their preferred type of connector is, everyone has a different opinion.
Yeah.
And there's about, 50 different styles of connectors you can get. All right. So at the end of the day, I had to make a call about which one I thought would be best. And you're not going to please everyone. But we've got connectors on there that are much bigger, so to make everyone happy. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to make a call on these things.
Yeah. And I guess that's part of the job, right? Is to distill all of that, look at the pros and cons, and occasionally just work out in which way you're going.
That's right. Yeah. But the first step is to get everyone's feedback into the process. Because if I don't know what people like or don't like about the product, then there's just no chance that we can improve on it. All right. So the first step was just getting people's feedback. And to anyone who's watching this podcast right now, if you've got some feedback, send me an email.
Matt's ready to hear it.
So we haven't actually talked about that, but I should just, I'm an owner of SRO and therefore Ramsey, and I'm leading the technical charge of this product. I want it to be the best product in the market, and it's going to be the best product in the market. It's going to live up to the Ramsey reputation. So anyone who has any feedback, just send it to me.
Yeah, and the great thing is that we're in a position where we're already demonstrating that we can make those changes regardless of how small they are. Like often you'll be in a situation where if there's a product that's being developed and there's a slight tweak left or right, usually the manufacturer will be like, well, we've already got everything set up now, so we can't really be bothered changing that tiny little thing just for that little niggle. Whereas we're in a situation right now where we can really kind of start to refine some of those things.
Well, I mean, we want it to be the best product that the technicians love to use. So if we can make a product that technicians love to use, then everyone will love to use it and it will be a successful product. So that's the strategy we're pursuing.
Yeah. One of the things that I, from outside in or on the sideline, I guess, over the last few months, observing, it looked as though really cracking the code of the firmware and the software and making sure that you had every layer of that available to you in terms of ability to modify took some time to get those building blocks right. And I guess anyone that's worked with kind of firmware code and compilation and that kind of thing would understand that if you miss something there, it can have a fundamental impact on the way it functions. But then after getting through that process, you've spent some good time getting a handle on exactly how the software works, even just from a user experience and user interface perspective. And it looked like, frankly, that was a little bit of fun as well, trying to work out, okay, should we put this there or put that there, or what features can we add, and what are the kind of things that are just going to make it as efficient as possible for technicians in the field. What are some things you can tell us about some of the tweaks that people will see in relation to the software that we're bringing out with this next release?
Sure. So the people will notice that the architecture or the menu structure of the product will be improved. So on the version that was manufactured by Thermo Fisher, there was a lot of pages which were in non-intuitive locations. So, I mean, if we use an analogy, something that makes Tesla a great product is its usability. It's just nice to use. Apple's another example. All right. So what people will notice is when they go in, things will be a lot more intuitive, easier to find, easier to navigate, and there'll be enhanced functionality in there. So we're adding a whole bunch of features into the controller that were not necessarily available to end users. So for example, things like trimming the input and output milliamp signals was something that was more of a factory calibration process than something that could be done by field technicians. So we've added in the ability for customers to do that kind of trimming and kind of calibrations on site if required. So a whole bunch of extra features like that. And that was all based on the feedback that we received from our own technicians and key customers that we work with. We've really tried to include every single feature that people want in a top of the line controller.
And importantly, some of those things are also just purely meaning that you, in very simple terms, you're pushing less buttons to achieve an outcome, right?
Yeah, correct.
And so that means that when you're in the field, you want to make sure you're moving as quickly as you can. And I was speaking to Dave about this on another episode around the fact that often the calibration process comes quite late in a shut. And so time is compressed. If you're having to make your way through multiple parts of the software to get something to happen, it can actually have quite a big impact, right? So knowing that you can move quickly from one part of the control to another is really useful.
Yeah, I won't get into every single kind of page layout, but when people get the product in their hands, they'll see that it's significantly improved. And again, as I said before, if people don't like something or they think it can be improved, just send me an email or call me, and we'll make a software patch and update if we think it's worthwhile.
And that's an interesting point, actually, because the software changes that you're making at the moment are backwards compatible.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they can be updated with SD card update. You just put a new SD card in, and then turn the system on and off, and it will detect that there's a new firmware that needs to be loaded onto the device. So install the firmware. We're making sure that any settings that the technician or customer has applied to the device are retained through that process. So it won't require any extra setup. So all those settings will be maintained. So any existing Flex in the field that was supplied by Thermo Fisher can have the new Ramsey software loaded up onto it. We're happy to provide that to anyone who wants it.
Yeah, awesome, great. So obviously the Flex has taken up a lot of time in the last little while just because we're trying to really get that one back and ready to go. As you look forward into 2025, what are you excited about in terms of the range? Where do you want to kind of get stuck into next? You've kind of been pulling apart the Flex and thinking about how we can kind of bring that back to market and production, but also a few little tweaks and improvements we can make. What else as you said, the Ramsey range is quite broad. There's lots of different products from very, very small to highly complex. What's the next one that excites you in terms of like really opening it up and seeing what we can do with it?
The Ultronic.
Yeah.
So one that's pretty exciting. It's the preeminent, metal detector in the market. There's nothing else that comes close to it. So we've been really excited to bring that back into manufacture. So we're currently going through right now the last step of verification of a small batch of Ultronics that we've had made for us. So we're going to run those through some extensive internal testing. And once we've completed that in the next month or so, the Ultronic will be back in full production. But I'm looking forward to working on the next generation of the Ultronic. While it is the preeminent and best metal detector in the market, we need to keep improving and don't just stay still. I'm planning to expend significant engineering resources and time making the product even better.
Yeah. Wow.
So I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on the Alltronic and really getting into the detail of that. And I think people will see it not just in 25, but over the coming years. We'll probably start to, platform the technologies. So at the moment, a lot of the controllers are separate, which makes stocking and spare parts difficult for our customers. So you'll probably see over time things will start to standardize on a platform so that there's a more minimal number of parts that customers need to stock. So we might have a core product for all type of instrumentation, and then with some extra card or something that you attach to it, it turns into an Alltronic, or it can turn into an integrator, or it can turn into any other number of products. So again, people shouldn't assume that Ramsey is just a belt weighing and instrumentation company. We've got massive plans to do all kinds of other things.
Yeah, exciting. So, and I think that the other one that stands out for me is the Microtech platform, which has a great history and a big fan base effectively, and was discontinued a few years ago. But we're in a position now where we can not only bring that back to the marketplace, but also make sure that we're incorporating all of the great things about that platform in our thinking around future roadmaps.
Yeah. So I talked a second ago about menu structure. So one of the strong feedbacks I had from our service technicians was they liked the structure of the MT9000 range in terms of the interface. That's probably because they're so used to it and they haven't used the Flex as much, and anyone doesn't generally like change. But there's an example of, we'll take some of those core things that people love about the range, and we'll try to make the new controllers more similar to what they were in the past. So enhanced features, enhanced technology, better accuracy, but more familiar in some way. And look, we're really excited to bring back the MT9000 range that was discontinued by Thermo Fisher. So if people want to use the 9000 range, we'll have them in stock if that's what they want to use. So we completely believe in giving customers choice in what they want to use. We have strong convictions about the Flex, and we think it's going to be the best controller in the market. And over time, the 9000 will probably fade away. But if customers want to continue using what they know, that's completely fine.
Yeah, fantastic. So thanks for your time today.
That's right.
I anticipate over the next few months, you'll have some really interesting product developments kind of coming out of the workshop. We might get you back for another episode to actually kind of open one up and kind of go through the detail, and maybe do even a bit of kind of user interface stuff on some of the controllers.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Cheers.
Catch you on.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to leave comments below. We're keen to get your feedback and make sure that what you want to see is what we're delivering in future episodes. Also, visit the website, srotechnology.com, if you want to learn more about what we're up to. And remember, keep measuring up.